Hey people, this is DJ.
And this is Ish.
And
this is
season
season 4 of
Better
Let Me Tell You.
You know what you were saying that really caught my attention?
What?
That 90s R&B channel.
Yes. It's
Okay.
it's Vivo 90s on Pluto TV.
Okay, that's me.
I was watching it for like a good 2 hours, and A, I knew every song, clearly. And B, I now have lots of questions about 90s music videos.
90s in general or R&B?
In general.
Well, before we get to that,
Yes.
everybody,
Yes.
welcome to episode 147.
147.
How is
now.
everybody? Happy Friday. Pedo Friday.
I think everybody's having a great Pedo Friday, but you know, we're having a very good fake Friday right
We're
now.
Friday. We are at Beat Culture Brewery.
Yes, sir.
Here in Miami, and we are actually recording live
From their brew room.
From their
brew house, brew room.
yes, where the beer gets made.
Yeah, there's just stainless steel as far as the eye can see.
Yeah, and it's a great place. Just not only I'm not much of a beer drinker, but even I've been drinking the beer here because it's amazing.
The sake beer.
The sake beer is like
so good.
outstanding, and most importantly,
Yes, thank you, Alan.
he was incredible for hosting us. Yeah. Such a nice guy, and you know, as we always try to do here in Pero, let me tell you, we try to promote like local business, local people, and like this guy is making things happen here in Miami, and I can't
really making things happen, not like most people on Instagram.
Influencers that don't
Just
influence
saying.
anything.
Exactly. Just saying.
Fake famous.
I have more influence on the weather than some influencers.
Fake famous that we talked about a couple of weeks ago back on HBO. But anyway, so great place. So if you hear a little bit of commotion in the background, we are recording live.
Yes, there's an event going on right now, a Porsche event. Like it's popping, as the
you know
kids
that
say.
every time that we've done a live recording that we say recording live, do you know what I want to say?
From the fabulous Alibaba Hotel
Of
and Casino.
course. I always want to go recording live from the fabulous Alibaba Hotel and Casino.
Fabulous.
That's a little reference to Full House for those who didn't get it. But anyway, back to 90s R&B. Yes. 90s R&B was the best. And let me tell you something. I bow to the church of Keith Sweat.
It's a very sexy church. I will say.
Amazing. It's funny because like when you think of 90s R&B, like it was only a decade, right? But
not even because
but early 90s R&B was so distinct from middle 90s R&B,
correct?
Which was so distinct from late 90s R&B.
Yes, exactly.
Because like late 90s R&B was like Genuine and like Drew Hill.
Right. Early
and all
90s
that.
R&B was lots of saxophone.
Yeah. Yes. No.
Yeah, it
You're
was.
right.
It was lots of saxophone.
It is. But middle like mid 90s R&B, that's like butter to me. That's like
because that's also because that's your Tony Braxton era, and we know how you feel about Tony.
Keith Sweat. Oh my God, Make It Last Forever. That's like my jam. That's like Make It Last Forever and Twisted. I mean, I haven't seen Keith Sweat live. If I see ever Keith Sweat live, I will be a little embarrassed at myself because I'm gonna be there like singing. You know you got my loving, baby.
Well, but then there's all the other women who are at the concert that are like just throwing their panties at the stage. So I think you'll be fine.
I'll be like,
you'll be
Keith,
fine.
I'm not throwing my panties.
Right.
But man, like 90s R&B is like the best.
Yes. So check it out. Vivo 90s. It's not just R&B. Like it also had like the teen pop.
Yeah.
So it had like the Britneys and the Backstreet Boys and all that. But it was like because it's 90s, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of R&B.
No, but it's the 90s, so it's like the first like 2 videos for each of them.
Right.
But then you also have got like Opposites Attract by Paula Abdul, because nowadays when people say the 90s, they think of like 97 onward.
Yeah, I'm like,
no, give me a 91.
Yeah.
You know?
But again, I feel when I think of 90s music, the music that I use to identify 90s music is like mid 90s.
But that's fair.
Because, like, for example, like Salt and Pepper. Salt and Pepper were big.
They played Shoop.
They were big in the 80s, and they were big in the early 90s with Let's Talk About Sex and all that. But I feel that they hit their stride with, like...
Shoop and What a Man.
Shoop and What a Man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Even though, again, let's talk about sex.
That was huge.
And
Push It.
Push It. I mean, Push It is like a
yeah.
freaking icon.
Yeah.
That song. But I feel that that album very necessary. And I love It's None of Your Business.
Oh my God! Thank you for reading my mind yet again.
Love that song. I mean, and then of course TLC. I mean, Red Light Special.
There was a video that it wasn't a TLC video, but there was a video that had Left Eye in it when I was watching it, and it made me sad.
What was it? You Know What's Up by Donald Jones?
Yes, it was.
Of course.
Yes, it was. And then I got very sad because I was like, she was like the proto Nicki Minaj, Cardi B. Like, if she'd still been around, like, I think she would have become like that icon. I don't think she gets enough credit. Because she died young, number one. But I think also because of the TLC of it all, she didn't get that chance to break out into her own style as much.
Yes and no. I think that when TLC were like at the top of their game,
At the waterfalls,
Left Eye was very much acknowledged for being like the creative and being out there. I think that her legacy should be bigger because her legacy is TLC. So, again, as a legacy, it's more TLC, not
Left Eye. Right, that's what I mean, yeah.
Because she actually, I mean, it's a long story. We don't have to get into that. But she kind of went solo at the end. She signed with Murder Inc.
Didn't she Supernova?
Yeah, and that didn't take off. Like, it didn't. And then she was going under another name. And
then she did the rap bridges for Mel C.
Which was kind of out there. But hey, Never Be the Same Again by Mel C. It was a number one hit in the UK.
Charted.
So, and we have a lot to say about the UK in a minute.
Yes.
We'll get there. Speaking of 90s. So this week, I don't know if it premiered this week, but I saw it this week. I saw the I guess revival or reboot of The Real World New York.
Oh, how was that?
So
wait, when did that come out?
I saw it this week.
No, the original. Was it 90?
So it came out in 92, but it was recorded in 91.
Okay.
Right? And I think I know we've talked about The Real World here in the show because we have my Real World story, which I'm gonna repeat again.
You're gonna
in a minute.
You're gonna cliff notes it
because when I spoke about the Real World story at the beginning, it was like our first season, and thankfully we have more listeners now, so they could listen to the story. But anyway, so what's like really interesting about the Real World, the reboot. So I mean, whatever. I'm not giving anything away. It's a freaking reality show, but
that's over 20 years old.
They kind of did it in the same way the Real World would always start. That like the first roommate will get there, and then the second one, and whatever, and it's at the same loft.
Yes.
As the original
in New York,
and then at the end, they're all there. They're like, "Where's Eric? Where's Eric?"
Eric Nies, who went on to host
The Grind and all that, and have fitness videos. And then what happened was he tested positive for COVID.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So at least in the first episode,
he's not there. So
from what I gathered, it's going to be several episodes, but they're together, I think, 1 week.
Oh, okay.
So they're probably going to film. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, shit, like you're not going to have enough time
for him to be okay.
To be there. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it was. It was interesting in the sense that, especially the first season. Again, you really have to appreciate this if you lived and breathed the Real World. Right. We did. I did. I mean, I was hooked on the Real World.
At least the first 5 or 6 seasons, for sure. It was like appointment television.
So, you really have to like know the first season and know those people to like look at it now and be like, oh my God, you're all in your 50s.
That's true.
And certain people like Heather is still Heather.
Right.
I felt that Julie was still her. Eric because Eric comes out on the TV.
Oh, because he's virtual.
He's virtual. They all seemed pretty much who they were. It's just. I think the part of it, especially with most of them, is that we saw so much of them for a few years.
Right.
Because even after the Real World, the first season of the Real World ended, Eric Nies was on MTV.
Yeah, they were staples on TV.
Heather was
singer,
a rapper.
Yeah.
So you still saw them for a few years after. But it's been a while since we've seen them.
Right.
And now they're all older. So it's like, you're full of gray. You're completely aged.
Yeah.
So it's like we still have that image of them in New York,
perpetually young,
young, fearless,
Yeah.
Kind of naive and bold that you are in your early 20s. But they're older; they're in their 50s. I think Julie is like 48.
Yeah, because
she was the youngest one.
The youngest one was like what, 18, 19.
And then, for example, I mean, these are things that just come with age. Like Kevin. I mean, Kevin was like probably my favorite because he was like the black activist, and he so much had that passion for like being a young black man and being active. And not to say that he's not now, but one thing is to be that in your early 20s, and another thing is to be that in your early 50s.
Just from an energy level,
right? Well, I mean, again, not that he's not passionate about those things, but it's like you're older, you're wiser, you approach things differently. True. So it's just to see like the change. He's like a lot more toned down. Norman is in his 50s, so I mean, this is the thing about getting older, that now that we're older, we're not in our 20s anymore, you see things differently. And it's just, what everybody says. You can't believe how fast time flies. It's unbelievable to me that show is 30 years old.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
Unbelievable. Like, what? How is that show 30 years old?
When did that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, when did it happen? Like, how? Like, where were we when this happened?
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's funny because it's like, I mean, well, now you have a kid. And it's like, I feel once you have children, it's like, oh, now it goes by even faster.
Yeah, it does.
Because you see it in them. That progression
because when
time.
you think of like 5-6 years, think 5-6 years is nothing.
Right.
But when you think of 5-6 years in the view of a child, it's like, 5-6 years you weren't even around, and now you're in kindergarten. Like,
right, and now you have like ideas and thoughts,
and opinions,
lots of opinions,
especially it's my kid. So, so that was really interesting. So my real world story. I have a real world story, ladies and gentlemen. So I talked about this, I think season 1 or whatever, but I'll repeat the story. I think it's a hell of a story.
It's a great story. It's a great story. We'll cliff notes it a little.
So I loved the real world. I wanted to be on the real world. I knew that I just that I doubt myself in everything that I do. But if there was something that I was confident about, was that I was real world material.
I believe it.
So what would have been the real world Hawaii, I did a kick-ass video. I shot it at FIU, when I was in college. I did a kick-ass video. Oh, how funny. We're talking about 90s R&B, and in the background they're playing Too Slow... Baby, when we're Too Close by Next. Wow, perfect. They knew we were talking about that. Anyway, so I sent my audition tape to the Real World, and I feel that around the time of the Real World Hawaii, the Real World had peaked in terms of its popularity.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that would after Hawaii is when it started to come down.
But by the time Hawaii rolled around, it was a phenomenal. Correct. It was a brand.
Yeah,
it was a brand. It was a very established brand. So they used to get thousands and thousands and thousands of audition tapes. So I got the audition tape, and I got a letter saying, "Oh, we have picked your tape in the first round."
Right.
So I think the first round was I'm making up the number 1,000. I don't remember. Right. And I remember it was a very general form letter. Then I got another letter that had a questionnaire.
Okay.
And I filled out the questionnaire. So this was round 2, a month later.
Okay.
Then the questionnaire turned into a interview.
A phone interview?
A phone interview, which nobody knew about this. Not even you.
I did not know about this, ladies and gentlemen. Just finding out.
Well, you're not just finding out, but that's how
right. You kept this on the low,
right? Because I didn't want to be I'm going to be on the Real World, and
right. Then what happens if you're not? Yeah.
Right. So then I had another round of interviews with them, and this was on a conference call, and that went well.
Before conference calls were a thing.
Right. So now I passed round 3. Round 4, I met with a few of the producers at the Hard Rock Cafe in Bayside. And they asked me general questions as well. And I remember that day they had a camera, it was 3 or 4 people, and behind them there was a camera. And I imagine it was to see how I looked on camera.
If you had presence.
In a confessional.
Right.
So that was the big one.
Okay.
So then they were like, okay, we'll let you know. By the time I went to the Hard Rock Cafe interview, I think they were down to like 50 people.
Right. I mean, like they're whittling it down.
They were down to 50 people.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'll never forget that the interview, the conference call, they were down to 250 people.
Oh, wow.
Right. So by the time we did Hard Rock Cafe, they were down to 50 people. So I'm like, shit, I hadn't made the cut from like thousands of people.
Right. It's potentially a real thing.
So they were like, okay, we'll let you know.
Right.
So, days turn into weeks turn into months, and I never heard from them. Right. And I was like, okay, I guess I didn't make it, and I figured that they would at least
send you like
send me a thank you but no thank you letter, right? But this was 1999. This was
this was before email was like a real thing.
Email was a real thing, but it still wasn't used.
Not the way we do it now.
Like now, and there wasn't really a contact like there is now.
There was no texting. There was no
whatever.
Yeah.
So I never heard back from them, and I'm like, oh, you fuck! Like, why couldn't they at least send me a letter saying, "Hey,
how
you didn't
rude,
make the cut," right? So whatever. The Real World premieres, and I'm the Real World Hawaii, and I'm like, fuck you, Colin. Like, I could have been you.
Do you think that's who you would have been?
I know that's who I was, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay. So here's the kicker of the story, audience. This was 1999. I would say about 15 years later. It wasn't that long ago.
No, I know.
I don't know if I was on a road trip. I was in the car with my father. And my father tells me, there's something I need to tell you. And I'm like, what?
Not something you want to hear from your father on a road trip.
And he's like, remember when you applied to the Real World? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, they sent you a FedEx with like plane tickets to go to LA. And I threw it away. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, because I didn't want you on that show because we come from a very decent family. And
una familia respetuosa
y decente. Y yo no quiero que tú vayas con esa inmoralidad por ahí.
Con esa gentuza.
Esa gentuza, esa depravación. and I'm like, okay, so they send you plane tickets. Like, yeah, there were plane tickets to LA. And then after.
Probably for like a final casting.
Right, like the final.
Right.
So, and then after, they kept calling the house. This was 1999. I didn't have a cell phone yet.
That's right. So they were calling the house. Literally the house.
They were calling my parents' house. Yeah. So my father and his sneaky ass shit probably turned the ringer off the phone so I wouldn't pick it up.
You were none the wiser.
And I found out about it like 15 years later. And now you say Colin, I know that I was supposed to be Colin, and I'm going to tell you why. The Real World Hawaii had a casting special, which not all of them did. It had a casting special that showed how all of them were casted. And I'll never forget that the hosts of the casting special was Colin.
Okay.
And this girl named Sol.
Okay.
Right? And they hosted the casting special. They were like in the LA rounds of casting, and they would like sit with people like, oh, do you feel confident? How you feel? Blah, blah, blah. Right. And at the very end, Mary Ellis Bunham, may she rest in peace, tells Colin, hey, we had somebody who didn't come through, and we're gonna put you on the show. And I'm like, it's funny because now with what I know, I'm like, oh, that would have been me.
For the record, Roberto, you robbed me of a chance to swim in a pool with a volcano. And I will never forgive you for that.
And all the money I could have made in the reunion specials, I could have still been on the challenge. I could have been on the challenge 45. Like, yep. I could have been on the Real World. I could have been on the Real World. I could have been on the fucking Real World.
You know what, though? It's probably good.
No, and do you remember?
Because I don't think you would have cared about Ruthie's drinking problem.
Okay. And do you remember what's the place all my life I've wanted to go to?
India.
Do you remember where their trip was?
No, it was
India. Oh. They went to India and Nepal.
Well then,
I should be the most. It's fun. So when my father tells me that day, I was like, oh really? Like, oh, why did you do that?
But once it sunk in,
the next day, I remember I went to my parents' house just to tell off my father. I'm like, I can't believe you did that. And he's like, I don't regret it. And actually, it came up not so long ago. And he's like, I don't regret it. I don't regret it because son unos depravados. And I'm like, this could have opened up a world of opportunity.
Meanwhile, that was before the deprivation really kicked in.
I know. This was before Las Vegas.
I was going to say.
And if I would have gone in the Real World, it would have opened up a whole world of opportunities. I would have gone to law school, and I wouldn't be in student debt. So, student loan debt.
Es verdad. You could have gone to India and swam.
I'm telling you, I drove to my parents' house just to tell my father off. I'm like, what the fuck were you doing, Robert? A ti te mandaron unos tickets ahí en un FedEx y después no paraban de llamar la casa. And I'm like, oh my God, those were my plane tickets to the LA round of interviews.
Oh, Lordy.
So, yeah.
Well, you know, parents and family do things sometimes that we don't agree with. You know, even the royals.
Even the royals. So, let's talk about that for a minute. So, I want to ask you because, so obviously, I have a vested interest in this because I'm a huge Meghan Markle fan.
Yes.
Because as our listeners
you may have
will know,
mentioned once
in 147 episodes, I love the show Suits.
Yes.
And Meghan Markle is from Suits. And that's like my favorite show. So yeah, I may have a little bit of an interest in the
bias.
show. And I've always you've known me for 30 years. I've always loved the history of the British monarchy.
Yes, that's true.
So this is totally up my alley. From your perspective, you know, like a casual monarch, you know,
enthusiast, as it were.
Did you see the interview?
So I did not see the interview.
Wait, what?
Okay, I didn't see the interview because I was busy this week, so I didn't see the interview. But I did read articles. Like EW did like a recap, like you know, like the hot points.
We run a podcast that is in part based on pop culture, and you did not watch one of the most memorable and important moments of pop culture in modern history.
I can't do everything all the time.
Okay, so tell me what you got.
So I will say this overall, you know, I believe Meghan. You know, when she says that it was difficult, that it was hard, that she had suicidal thoughts. That I mean, I am totally on her side. I agree, I get it.
I feel there's a butt coming.
There is a big butt coming. But the part where she kind of loses me is when she tells Oprah something to the effect of like, you know, well, I didn't really know much about the royal family, and like she tries to play a little ignorant in that regard. And the reason that doesn't sell with me is because si ella fuera una estúpida, maybe. But the problem is that Meghan Markle is very intelligent. So I'm not buying the whole, like, you know, I didn't really know. Had she phrased it of, like, you know, I thought I understood what it would mean, but it was beyond my comprehension. It was more than I had imagined, you know, whatever. Like, you can't, like, she's an intelligent woman. Like,
sorry, they're playing Fantasy by Mariah Carey.
I know. I lost you. I saw your eyes glaze and go to another place. Sorry. With, you know, featuring Big Baby Jesus.
Que Dios lo tenga la gloria.
Exactly. There's someone who I don't think I've ever said that about. So like that's the only part to me that was a little like, you know, I don't know, Meghan. I don't know. I don't know that
you don't believe that she had like no idea what she was stepping into.
Exactly. Because I don't care how little you know about the monarchy. Like it's Princess Diana was basically killed by the paparazzi. So you don't know what you're walking into.
I think what she was, the way I took it.
Now maybe she didn't phrase it properly to my taste.
Maybe she didn't phrase it properly. I understand what you're saying.
Como dice Madonna, you know, when you show up at my door to date me, you know what you're in store for.
That's true. But I think that maybe she didn't know or understand the extent of the protocol of the British monarchy. For example, for example,
I was again. I'm not as big a royal family buff as you are, but even I know that like once you become a royal, you will never make another decision that is yours again.
Right, but like for example, I could see, even if you know about like the British monarchy, you know, like the Queen of England, you know the basics, right? For example, women that are, I don't know if it's in the whole monarchy or at least high members of the British monarchy, can't wear open-toe shoes.
Oh, I didn't know that. But
yeah, like stuff like that.
But it doesn't surprise me. I'm saying.
It doesn't surprise you, but I think that when you know it's going to be a restrained environment, but I think that maybe she knew it was going to be restrained. Like, oh yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm not going to be able to do, but I think that maybe she didn't appreciate the full extent of that restraint.
But that's what I'm saying. I think if she had phrased it that way, I'd be a little more like, I would buy that side of the argument more. It's just the way she phrased it is maybe, I'm parsing. But.
Because like she said something there, which I actually had heard before. Where she didn't have access to her own driver's license and passport. And those are things that you don't think about because what is more intimate and attached to you than your driver's license and your identification? Yeah, and she doesn't have that. Like she doesn't really have a purse right. With her like documentation in it, right? And you know, for example, and this is something that's very well known, like I imagine that now they've been less restricted about it, but a lot of times when these monarchs will go on these tours, they couldn't take their kids.
Oh yeah,
and they'd be gone for like 6 months without like freaking seeing your kids.
Yeah.
You know,
well, Diana was the first one who basically said "de eso nada."
Right. So I think that maybe she didn't appreciate the odds and ends and all that. Like look, I
just think that we're not talking about an institution that's new.
Okay, was there anything else of the interview that like stuck out to you that?
I found this one part that was, to me, just personally, I found it a little like, I get what she was saying, I get why she said it, I get where she was coming from, but I found it a little like bitchy. Again, for my taste, when she talks about like the whole thing about the wedding and the flower girls and how they had said that she had made Kate cry. And
I think she could probably have left that out.
Yeah, because she was kind of like, it was great because she was just kind of like, well, that's not true. Like, they kind of made me cry and whatever. But, we're good now. So, I don't want you to be upset at her. It's like, oh, so you just went through this whole story of telling us how she's a total bitch. But now you're like, no, but I don't really want you to hate her.
Right.
Like.
You know what, though?
And
again, I tried to see this in an unbiased way. Right? A lot of people have been saying, like, well, like that. Why does she have to drag, Kate Middleton through the mud,
right?
And why, that if they really want that much privacy, why did they have to sit down with Oprah? Because they knew they were going to get the attention they got.
Yeah, they didn't sit down with Gayle; they sit down with Oprah.
Right. But here's the thing, and I understand that argument. But here's the thing: these people have been Harry all his life,
right?
And her in the last 4 years. For 4 years, so let's just talk about them as a couple. Right. For 4 years, the narrative has been made up about them. Right. People have made up stories about them.
Like they do about any celebrity.
Right. But the royals, this is on another level.
Right. But I'm saying
the narrative has been built, completely stolen from them and made up. And there's been racism, and especially there has been an attack on her. Because say what you will, but there has been an attack in the British tabloid press of her. And again,
be it because she's black or American or whatever, I agree.
For whatever reason, it's probably a combination of all that. La tienen cogida con ella, because the best example of that is, I think it was BuzzFeed. I forgot which publication it was that used the coverage of Kate Middleton versus her. Yeah. Like when Kate Middleton was pregnant, I think with her first baby.
Look how lovingly she's rubbing her bum.
Whereas with Meghan Markle, it's like, why can't she leave her baby bump alone?
Right.
When Kate Middleton was into avocados, oh my God, it's so great that she's into avocados. Right. So healthy. When Meghan Markle was into avocados.
She makes them bring it in from California.
Yeah, it's causing a water shortage, and like people are dying because of her avocados.
Right.
And it goes on and on and on. Like it's like continuous. Like the examples they give, there's like 20, 30 examples of this.
Yeah, I remember that article.
So when you see that these people's narrative was stolen, and now they're finally like, you know what? We're out of this bullshit, and now we're going to say what we need to say.
Guess what?
Politeness Week is over. And we're going to say what we need to say. You won't get mad, Buttercup? Deal with it. Right? I don't believe that when Oprah said it, that they weren't paid for money. And the whole thing about how dark that baby was going to be, I remember people that I know saying, I mean, we're Americans. The monarchy doesn't mean to us what it means to them. I remember people saying that I know. It's like saying, like, if that baby comes out too dark, the monarchs are going to have a problem with it. Right? Because of the history that they have of the monarchy. Right? Just think of how long the monarchy has lasted, and it's always been white. So the fact that somebody was questioning the shade of the baby.
I don't doubt it at all.
I don't doubt that at all.
I don't doubt it at
all. At all. And then, freaking Piers Morgan. Does anybody talking about, if the baby's gonna, maybe be darker, is that racist? No, Piers. When the same if like it's two white people, you say, oh, what is he gonna get from the mom, and what is he gonna get from the
It's about context.
Right. It's about context. One thing is for you to say if you're an interracial couple to be like, oh,
he got my mother's eyes and my dad's hair or whatever.
Right. And another thing, as they described it, is that there were concerns. Like the key word is concerns, right? Because otherwise it'd be like, you know what? If the baby comes out dark, he comes out dark. If he comes out light skin, he comes out light
redhead,
skin.
whatever.
If he comes out, ginger, who cares, right? That's clearly not what happened there. Right. So you know what? There's a part of me that is kind of happy that they kind of absolved Queen Elizabeth, because I have a love-hate relationship with Queen Elizabeth. Again, I've read of the monarchy. I have a whole like level of books in my library at home of the British monarchy. I go back and forth with Elizabeth. Like, I think Elizabeth, on the one hand, she's the longest-serving monarch of all history, of all time. Seems like a very dignified person, and I understand that there's times that she's come across being heartless, and maybe she just wanted to just handle things privately and quietly. So I have a back and forth with her, but honestly, because she is the Queen of England and she represents so much, I'm happy that it's not her.
Well, but I think it goes to...
Because I think it would have been so disappointing.
If it was her.
If it would have been her.
Like her orders.
As the head of the monarchy.
But it's interesting because I think it's...
Not that it's less disappointing if it would have been like Charles or
right.
William. They're both going to be king.
No, but it's like the old saying, it starts at the top, right?
Right.
I think it is interesting, again, and it goes back to something that actually you and I have experienced just with this show, where, there are times where it's not the person. And I think that's what they were trying to do with distinguishing between like the family, the firm, the whatever, the administration, whatever they call it. Sometimes like you hear these horror stories about like, oh my God, dealing with so-and-so was a nightmare because blah, 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 right? And it's like, but did you deal with so-and-so? No, I dealt with their publicist. Right. A lot of times it's the publicist.
And that's why they said it in the interview.
Right. Trying to do something that they think is in the best interest of who they're representing, and they become a nightmare. And then unfortunately, because the publicist is John or Jane Smith, who nobody knows, then it becomes, fulano de tal is a total asshole.
I love that video. Now they're talking about publicists. That video that exists on YouTube. So this is an Mariah Carey interview from when she was releasing the Butterfly album.
With
Tabitha Soren from MTV was interviewing her. And obviously this didn't make it on air, but the video exists on YouTube, and you could find it of like the behind the scenes.
Just look up Tabitha Soren, Mariah Carey.
Una faja with Mariah Carey's.
And publicist. The worst part is that they're on a boat, so they can't go anywhere.
Yes, and Mariah's sitting there like, okay. And Mariah's like, can we just finish the interview? But you could tell that she was caught. Well, she literally was caught in the middle of it, and she's like, take me out of this. Like, it is. People look up Mariah Carey Tabitha Soren fight interview.
It's
but
gold.
anyway,
Look it up.
So yeah, I'm like team Harry and Markle.
Harry and Markle?
Harry and Meghan all the way. I think that he, maybe because of the things that, thankfully, knock on wood, knock on something,
stainless steel.
I can't relate to what the loss of a parent is, thankfully, thank God.
Especially that traumatic.
But the loss of a parent manifests differently on different people, right? We don't know in private how badly William has taken the loss of his mother, but Harry has been very open about how it's affected him. And again, not to say that it hasn't affected William.
Well, everybody's different.
But Harry has been very open on how it's affected him, and I think that he has a different perspective that the public does not understand. And I think that when you start looking, like I actually went back and looked at the Martin Bashir interview that Princess Diana gave in 1995, and it's almost the same thing as these people were saying in this interview, that she wasn't listened to, she was treated as an object, that her feelings and her person was completely lost.
It's not about you, it's about the royal image,
that they wanted to control her life in every way, shape, or form, that it was destructive. I mean, all this excuse me, and it's sort of what these people have been saying. And I thought that one of the most telling parts was when Harry was speaking, and he said, he was talking about the finances, and he goes, no, thankfully I have the money my mom left me, because she almost saw this coming. I thought that was really telling, because there's a part where he goes that they were cut off, because the whole thing with them that happened was that they weren't going to get security.
Right.
Because their goal was not to leave the monarchy, was to step down from being senior monarchs.
Oh, okay.
So they would have been like
Account.
Fergie daughter levels.
Oh, okay.
Right?
That's a great level. You can still do a sponsorship with Weight Watchers.
And they weren't going to give them security. And they're like, but we need security. And their whole thing was like, forget about me. Like, Meghan was like, forget about me. But this is his birthright. Like, why are you denying him security? And that was like the whole thing, like, one of the things that started like to get to the breaking point. So yeah, I feel bad for them, and I really hate when this is something that really bugs me, because this is people hablando mierda, because people tienen que hablar mierda when people are like, oh yeah, in their $15 million mansion, and
rich people problems,
rich people problems, like Crimea River, you're rich. It's like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Like, because they're rich, they don't have problems? I've always thought, this is my personal
more money, more problems
view on things, is that the more money you have when you are depressed or you're going through something tough, it's even worse, because you have all these things and you say to yourself, I'm supposed to be happy.
Right. I should be okay.
And I'm not. And another example I give is like, people that say these things about, usually it's celebrities or people with power, people that have money. Oh, like, whatever. If I had your money, I wouldn't have any problems in the world. It's such bullshit, because you know what? As a middle-class person,
you have problems.
You have a car, you have a house, you have food on your table, you have clothing, you have things to live your normal life. You know what? Somebody who's homeless doesn't have anything of that and is struggling to find a meal. And I'm sure that from that homeless person's perspective,
you're rich.
You have no problems. So what the hell are you complaining about, Karen? Right?
No, you're right.
It's all perspective.
Yeah, it's all perspective.
So, I feel bad for them. Freaking Piers Morgan is a slob, because Piers Morgan has been, for months, not now, personally attacking her. Y tuviste lo que salió, right? That he had, I don't know if they had dated, but they knew each other personally.
They didn't date. They had met up for drinks once.
Right. They knew each other
literally
personally.
once.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then after that was the same night she met Harry.
Right.
And she never, reached out to him again to say hello or whatever. And so, yeah, como que la tiene cogida con ella.
Yeah, right. And then again, I know in this day and age, everything is editorial journalism.
Yeah.
Which is
everything's an op-ed.
That's an oxymoron in a way.
Yes,
editorial journalism, and the thing with him is so he hates her so much that he's blinded by it. And he quit his show. He walked out and quit.
I know, I saw that.
I saw the video when it first got posted. Because Twitter was on fire.
Yeah.
Twitter was freaking,
ablaze.
Yeah, and this guy from the morning show. From Good Morning Britain.
Oh, I'm like, which morning show?
So in Good Morning Britain, he walked off
because it was the weatherman.
The weather guy,
basically was like, ¿Qué te pasa con ella?
He was like, you attack her every day, and we have to hear this every single day. We get it. You don't like her. You knew her personally, and she
whatever happened.
She dodged you, and she has a reason to reject. She has a right to reject you. We hear this every single day. Move on, get over it. And then that's when Piers Morgan got up and left. It's very toxic. If you don't like them, just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I'm sure that him not liking her also generated a degree of ratings for the show. So I'm sure that his bosses didn't have an issue with him always talking shit about her, because every time he did,
but did you hear what happened?
But I'm saying every time he did, it would be a meme.
But did you hear what happened? He quit, but I think it was one of those, either you quit or we fire you.
Yeah.
Because they got 42,000 complaints.
Right, because the problem was that he complained about he started questioning whether her allegations or her claims of being suicidal were true or not. And at that point, you're not talking about oh, she's such a bitch, right? Now you're talking about mental health, and that's a different story.
Yeah, that's whatever. He's awful. So.
Yeah, he's not. And to think, at one point, we wanted him to, tell us America's Got Talent.
I mean, look, I'm not going to say I've never liked Piers Morgan, but Piers Morgan has never been my cup of tea.
Ni fu ni fa.
Yeah, I've been whatever, Piers Morgan,
You're no Larry King, sir, no matter what CNN thought.
Yeah. Did you see the interview of Chelsea Handler that came out?
With him?
Yeah.
No.
Chelsea Handler was in his show some years ago when it was on CNN, and Chelsea Handler was like, "You're not a very good interviewer." And he's like, "Well, maybe you're not a good interviewer." She goes, "Yeah, but it's not my job for this to be a good interview. It's yours." And then apparently this is when they had already been canceled, and he's like, "And apparently you're not very good, because if not, your show wouldn't have been canceled."
Oh.
So in the Chelsea,
that Chelsea Handler
way. So before we go to our interview, I just wanted to say really quickly that today I went to CVS to pick up some prescriptions, and God, do I love Miami. I mean,
was it for your rosacea?
No, my God, no. I was there in the CVS pharmacy. Of course, they had one person at the counter.
Always.
And there was like 4 or 5 people there. So there was un señor, un viejo cubano ahí con el bastón, just wanted to make ruckus. No, porque a mí me llamaron y me dijeron que la pastilla mía ya estaba. Y mira, ya estoy aquí hace 10 minutos y no tienen la pastilla. Pero ¿por qué me llamaron? ¿Por qué me llamaron? And then he would like look at everybody. No, porque then the other
Buscando
people.
el pleito.
Right. And then he would look at me and I go, sí, señor, qué cosa, ¿verdad? And I'm like, I'm not going to continue with this. Entonces estaba Marta.
Oh.
Marta.
There's
And her
always a
name was
Marta.
Marta.
Okay.
Who had like, I'm not kidding, like 9 prescriptions to pick up.
Pero,
Right, and she had questions on all of them. Pero esto se toma con comida. ¿Y cuántas veces esto se toma? And then the lady at the counter, señora, como tú sabes, las instrucciones está en el paquete.
Right.
No, sí, yo sé, pero no estoy segura. Señora, está en el paquete. Sí, pero no sé cómo. Like, I'm not kidding. She had like 9 prescriptions. Entonces, I think his name was Alberto and hers was Clara, who were like super upset that there was one person en la caja.
Okay, fair.
Right.
Fair.
Right, but they were being very vocal about it. Pero ¿cómo es esto que hay una sola persona aquí? Right? And I think it was Alberto because I heard her call him Alberto. And then I think that somebody in the back who was processing her prescription, from what I gathered, said Clara. They were like Clara or whatever her last name was. So I was like, so there I was, and I'm like, I love this.
This is everything you could want and more.
I love this. I don't care that this is taking forever. I don't care that I'm wasting 30 minutes of my life picking up a prescription that should have only, mind you, and then when they finally call on me, I'm like, Darian Board, just all your prescriptions here, I pay in, in less than 2 minutes I was
you're
gone.
like, whatever, I'll
And
take
I'm
it
like,
how I take it.
But I'm like, I got a 30-minute show for free. I was like, this is what I love about Miami.
That is true.
I love it. Where else would that have happened?
No.
And when I left, the viejo still had not gotten his prescription.
Aw, poor viejo. I hope he's still not there.
He's so oh, boy.
Oh,
So,
Lord. But you know what else is kind of a Miami staple?
Dime.
JaiAlai.
Oh, yes.
And that is also the name.
In fact, when I think of JaiAlai, I think of Miami Vice.
I think of
because
Miami Vice, of
opening
course.
The opening scene.
Of course.
sequence.
Of course. Well, today we have the lead singer of a band based in Miami by the name of JaiAlai. His name is Oscar Sardinias. And their new album, well, actually their EP, it drops today. They've got a really cool, funky sound.
Yeah,
and
I really, really like them.
To say they're a Miami-based band and then hear the music that they make, it doesn't click.
Yeah, because people have preconceived notions of what Miami
But it's
sound
so
is.
good.
No, it's excellent. But then it begs the question, like, what is the Miami sound?
Well, the Miami Sound Machine, clearly.
Well, yes.
So here's our interview with Oscar Sardinias from the band JaiAlai. And welcome back, everybody. As we said, we have with us the vocalist from local band that I gotta say I am totally grooving to, has really worked its way in. You guys are like earworms in the best way possible. Like you're in my head. The band is named JaiAlai, which I gotta say congrats, because I think that is possibly the most Miami name you could come up with. You guys are from Miami. You're a band based out of Miami. We've got Oscar Sardinias with us here today. So thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you for having me.
Now, gotta say, I know you guys are a Miami band. You got a nice, good little Latino mix of heritages in there, from Venezolano, Salvadoreño, Cuban. How did you guys? I gotta ask the name, like JaiAlai. I mean, that just feels like such a. I guess being from Miami, I know what that is, but why did you guys decide on that name?
Well, I mean, I'm from Miami. My other bandmates, 2 of them are from Venezuela, one's from El Salvador. But JaiAlai it's such a Miami thing, and it just makes me think of Miami culture, the 80s. ESPN did a documentary, a 30 for 30 on it.
Yes, it did.
I watched it before we even named ourselves that, but I don't. All I know is we had a bunch of bad names before, just some terrible names, and we were like, guys, none of this is sticking. I wasn't saying that. I was cool with whatever. Let's just get a move on. But one night we were hanging out, and Ricky, our drummer, was drinking JaiAlais, and he looked at it, and I guess in some sort of a not drunken epiphany because he wasn't drunk, but in some sort of epiphany, he was just like, "Hey, what about JaiAlai?" And I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, not because of the beer, but rather the name and the sport. My family is Basque, so I was like, oh, that's a cool name. So I searched it in Google and looked for it everywhere, and it wasn't taken. So we're like, that's it. And yeah,
Gotta
You know
say,
what? You know what's funny that like when Ish scheduled this interview and put it on our calendar, I looked at it and I'm like, I didn't realize it was in the context of a band, and I was like, "Is JaiAlai the sport making a revival?" And we're like gonna interview like people.
the head of JaiAlai, the CEO
Yeah, I
of
was like,
JaiAlai.
wow.
Yes.
I was
the
like,
official El Capo.
yeah. And but you know what's funny though, that when obviously we talked about the fact that you guys were a band, and we did a little research on what we found on your band. It kind of makes total sense because the word highlight is a really cool word. Even if you know nothing about the sport, it's sort of a cool word. So I think it makes total sense. It's sort of an homage to Miami, but without being too overtly Miami. It's not like you named your band Dale, or like,
I would.
So I think actually it's a really, really cool name.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I gotta say, cool sport, great beer, fantastic band. Now, you guys have been around since about 2019, right? So it's fairly recent, I guess, like officially. Would that be correct?
No, we've been around since 2016. Playing shows and kicking around, and we've had a couple of releases. But 2019 we released our first LP.
That's right. Sorry about that.
Say so. Yeah, but we were just making the rounds, playing shows, having fun, meeting people, and exploring the beautiful rock scene that is South Florida.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. So how you said that your other musicians are have different backgrounds. How did this start? Were you guys just friends for a while who always talked about making a band and just one day did it, or how did it start? And most importantly, stylistically, how did you decide what you were going to do, what you were going to contribute stylistically to the music?
So we'd met. Sounds like an eHarmony commercial, but we met. We met around. I know it was cold. I forgot the day. I'm not good with numbers, but we
if it
met.
was cold in Miami, it's like February.
Probably it was around there. I think it was for Ricky's birthday. Ricky used to have people over at his house a lot. Ricky was friends with a good friend of mine, George Patterson. Shout out to George if you ever around listening to this. But we met at a party. We just kind of hit it off as friends, and then Ricky had instruments in his room, and they were jamming, and they're like, oh, everyone's switching instruments. So I hopped on the guitar, and I started playing some songs. I was in a band previously, and that band, we just kind of went our own separate ways. So I was kind of looking to start a band actually, and that night, I was like really looking to start a band, to be honest with you. I felt like, that night I just started playing songs and they jumped on. It was kind of immediate. Like Ricky was there and Hobie was there, and I played a song and it felt like this is right. It immediately felt right, and that was it. There wasn't like, no one was like saying to do anything. It all just kind of came out sounding like that.
Yeah, I have to say, your music, the word I most I think would use is to describe it is it's groovy, and I mean that in like I use groovy all the time, because it's got just like a really great vibe. Like, and I didn't even know how to explain it until I read. I was looking through again some of the emails that I think we were back and forth with I'm assuming your publicist, and they I saw something that said you guys blend dream pop with shoegaze and psych, and I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. There's just this like super chillax vibe, like just let it, like I said earlier, become that earworm. How did you guys decide that that's the sound? Like, how did you arrive at that? Again, especially being from Miami, where the argument could be made so much here is Latin tinged, quote unquote. And you guys almost have like a Doors sound.
I think it just comes to the kind of music that we like. As far as like a groove goes, though, that started happening when Mario joined the group. Mario Lemus, our bassist, and he's a very groovy bassist. So he kind of added that. He added that element. I'm not that groovy. I don't think
I
compared
don't
to
know.
like
Don't sell yourself short. I think you're pretty groovy
he
guy.
added. Aww. Well, but he added that element though, but as far as the music, having it not sounding so Caribbean or like Latin infused, I do think that there are touches of that, but yeah, I mean my at least my favorite groups I've always loved, not so much that. I grew up on rock. I grew up on like MTV, Nirvana, stuff like that. So it's just kind of like the Strokes, all that kind of stuff. That kind of smoking pot opened the door to, like, when I was little, to liking the Doors and Led Zeppelin and whatever else, the Velvet Underground, and that spiraled into loving rock and roll. And it's still, that's my favorite kind of music. It still is.
What is the creative process for you?
For us, it really varies. I don't think that any two songs have the same process to them. For example, the song "Victor's Belt," which is it's the one that I feel people request the most.
Thanks for bringing it up. It's my current favorite, by the way. And I'm yeah. It's
thank you. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. A lot of things, like the best stuff with us, just happens. So like Victor's Belt was, Mario showed up to. We were rehearsing in back of Churchill's at this at the rehearsal space in back of Churchill's. Yeah. Shout out to Churchill's. But yeah, we were rehearsing there, and Mario was just he brought an upright bass. Just randomly decided to lug this enormous upright bass,
as one does,
and yeah, as one does, on a regular Tuesday afternoon. Let's just lug this giant piece of equipment, and he brought it in. I was like, okay, cool. Let's see what happens. He just started playing bum, 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 and like literally, I kid you not, I have an iPhone recording of it. The song came out, like it just, like everything flowed. The guitars, the voice, the drums, all of it all came out like that. And that's kind of like to me, like the best stuff with this group has happened like that.
Yeah, it's funny you say you're like, I don't think I'm a groovy person, but that was probably like the grooviest answer I've ever heard. It's like, well, he showed up with the stand-up bass, and we were just like, okay, we're doing this now. Like that's like the epitome of just like. I
think we were chilling though. I think we were really chilling, and I kind of miss those days a lot. Obviously COVID and like everything, forced people indoors a little bit more. But the best stuff comes out when we're chilling.
Just curious, where was the video to that song shot?
That was shot by Hovey. Hovey decided to live in Mexico City. Like I think it's 2 years ago. It feels like 5 years ago. But he moved out there. And everything went well. We did a tour in Mexico. And he kind of was like our ambassador there, and he knew there's a lot of artists in Mexico City, so he made friends with a video director, and they shot it right on his rooftop. That was shot on his actual home's rooftop in Mexico City.
It's really
beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah,
the video.
Go on, sorry.
No, I was saying I was trying to figure it out, so I'm glad you asked that, Darian, because I was like, where was that shot? Like, I could not figure it out. I'm like, the rooftops look familiar, but they don't.
Yeah, that was in CDMX.
Ah, there we go. Now, you mentioned you guys had toured in Mexico, but you also mentioned COVID. What has that been like for you guys? Like, how have you adjusted, to life with COVID in terms of performing and being a band?
well, performing has been kind of out of the question for now. Hopefully, with the vaccine coming out and all that, hopefully there's some sort of herd immunity. I'm personally not. I'm not into the idea of performing to the limited capacity and everyone standing 10 feet away from each other thing, like so much, unless it's like some sort of a curated event. Like, I think that right now it's forced us to get more into creating content, into filming videos, into that kind of stuff, recording, writing, and doing all that. But up until now, we haven't wanted to perform at all. Like, now we're kind of starting to entertain that, and by next month we should feel better about it. But it's still kind of.
Well, you have a performance coming up in March at the Adrian Arch Center, right? March 26th.
Yeah.
You were mentioning.
Yeah.
So I know that they've been doing a lot of outdoor.
Yeah, that's an outdoor event, and it's socially distanced, and it's a beautiful place. Of course, the famous Adrian Arch Center.
They're doing it in the courtyard, right? I believe.
Yeah. I think I was referring more to performing at an indoor rock venue, a crammed, sweaty room kind of thing.
It's not the same. It's not the same to be in a on a stage indoors and have 10 people. You're not gonna get that vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like outdoors is different because you have things to look at and it's the setting, it's everything. But yeah, I hope that it comes back soon. I think maybe by the fall or something, we should start seeing more shows happening. I hope so.
So, during this time of COVID, that for better or for worse, we've been stuck at home. Have you guys gone through a creative moment where you've just been producing a lot of stuff? Has it inspired you guys? How has COVID affected your, the way you make music, if at all?
A lot. It's been a lot to process. I feel like 2020 was a lot to process because of COVID and politically and the social climate and all that. A lot of music, a lot of music has been written, and hopefully we can record it and put it out at some point.
So I know you have an EP coming out in March. Was any of that the result of these COVID sessions, as it were? I guess we'll call them COVID sessions.
The COVID sessions.
The COVID sessions that led to maybe As Sweet as I Was, which is your EP. Sorry. Did any of that make it on there, or was this stuff that's just have been coming for a while?
No, that most of As Sweet as I Was is 2020-ish, without being too topical. I hope I try to avoid that kind of thing. We just released a single that it's a little bit hits the nail on the head a little more as far as the political stuff and the upheaval and whatever you want to call it, but
is that
yeah. Of course, it was a very inspiring time. I mean, God, it's the craziest year of my life. I don't know, just observationally, it's been a crazy year. So yeah, a lot of music came out of that,
Now that you mentioned politics, without having to dive into politics,
La política.
Interview a lot of different artists on here. Do you feel that as an artist, you have sort of a duty to express, whatever not necessarily your political view, but whatever it is you're feeling at the moment as a result of politics? Or do you rather just kind of stay out of it and have somebody else deal with it?
That's a great question. Let's remember the single's name is Vesuvius, the the volcano that exploded. So
yeah. As far as I've always I haven't turned away from that. You don't want to be too blatant or obvious unless you're if you're an artist like Public Enemy or Rage or something like that, where you're just so in your face about it and that's your thing. That's amazing, and you got to do it like that. But yeah, I've made some veiled attempts at that. Yeah. I think that it's important to express whatever you're feeling. Yeah.
We always like to ask artists, a similar question because, I remember a couple of years ago, for example, I mean, although she's a very mainstream artist with a very large audience, a lot of people were giving Taylor Swift a lot of, crap because she wanted to stay out of politics. She didn't want to, take any sides, even if personally or privately she did. And then she finally did. So it's always, we find it very interesting, like, different artists take on that, where some, as you said, like Public Enemy or even U2 back in the day were so political and had such a distinct message, and it was all about social commentary. And now, that we're in a way so divisive and polarizing, I feel it could be a struggle for some artists. It's like, where do I fall?
I think that it kind of, I personally think that you should do it. I think that artists should speak their minds. It's kind of what an artist is there for. But other artists might tell you otherwise. I know like Bob Dylan used to say they like to stay out of it and like stuff like that. But then you look at his material and you're like, did he really stay out of it?
Right,
So
right.
I believe in in addressing it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you don't, and you're kind of not giving a voice to something that absolutely needs it. And there's certain causes nowadays that absolutely need support.
Yeah. There's also something to be said, I think, about doing it authentically. There are some artists who probably don't do it because they just feel like that's, of course they have their opinions, but it comes across, ham-fisted or, just pandering.
If you're fake about it, yeah, absolutely not. Don't do it. But if you truly feel it, and I always say I have a hard time writing love songs. Like, I'm not good at writing about love. I'm like, I'm like, practically wifed up, and I just don't write love songs, and like, like I never have. Like, I mean, I did, but like I feel like I enjoy writing about, that kind of thing, more darker topics. I don't know. Yeah. I do.
Yeah. Well, all artists have their wheelhouse, right? It's.
I have it. Yeah.
They do what they can. Everybody's got their own, their own lane.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, some people can, scoot around from here and there, but yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Oscar, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, I know that your EP, As Sweet as I Was, comes out on March 12th. And for those of us who are local, such as ourselves, March 26th, you guys will be playing at the Adrian Arsh Center.
Correct.
Can they just find tickets for that online? Like, it's under JaiAlai, or is it part of a?
It's part
a
of the Arsh Center. It's just us. We're performing on the 26th.
Congrats.
And thank you. Yeah, and it's going to be outdoors, and you go, you visit the Arsh Center website, and the tickets are there.
Awesome. And, guys, you can find them on Spotify. That's where I have been absolutely just jamming to them for the last, I would say, like maybe 3 weeks. Like, you guys seriously are almost on a loop. You're the perfect, I mean this as a compliment, you're the perfect companion for me during the workday, because it's like, you keep me awake, you keep me going, but you kind of also bring me down when my workday is getting like insanely crazy and I want to start hitting people. So thank you for that.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, you keep me balanced. So, check them out on Spotify, JaiAlai. You guys your Instagram handle is JaiAlai Official, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or check out the sport too, I guess, if you find
check out the sport. Yeah, go visit your local fronton.
Oh, I did not know that's what it was called. So thank you for that. You
fronton. Yeah.
All right, Oscar. Well, thank you so much. And you know what? We look forward to, hopefully maybe in March. If not, once everything goes back to normal, seeing you guys perform live, because I definitely, again, I've been experiencing it recorded. I need to experience you in person. I need to hear it coming out of your instruments live and in person.
Soon.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
And we're back.
Yep.
That was fun.
It was a fun interview. And you know what? I can't wait till we go see them live.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God, the first concert in like 1,000 years.
I know.
In like a millennia.
I know. I feel like we should get some type of like trophy or placard for
Yeah,
that.
I was there.
Yes. Yeah. They're
Is it outside?
It is outside.
Okay.
It's on the actual like the courtyard of the Arch Center.
Okay. Está la fuente.
See, actually, más o menos por ahí.
Yeah.
March 26th at the Arch Center. So if you guys are in Miami and you want to go check them out, we'll be there.
Now I'm wondering if that man is still in CVS with his prescription. I was going to say that CVS is open 24 hours a day, but the pharmacy is not.
Yeah, but if the CVS is open, that's all he needs.
Yeah, that is true.
He can just sit at that blood pressure machine.
And at this CVS, which is I'm sure it's the same of most CVSs and Walgreens, now they're doing the COVID shots.
Oh, that's true.
And, you know, en la entrada estaba llena de viejo, you know, like, ¿a dónde me siento? ¿A dónde tengo la nota del doctor? You know, and I'm like, I love this. Like, I love this. I love that. I'll never forget that one a few years ago. I was at the Walgreens in Hialeah. The Walgreens by my office in Hialeah. And there was a lady, and I'll never forget her name was Mirta too, because, you know, we love Mirtas. Again, there was like, she was the only cash register in like all of Walgreens. And I think that the thing about Walgreens and CVS is that literally 1 second, there's nobody in line.
And then all
the
of a
next
sudden,
second, there's like 10.
Yeah, they teleport.
It's not even like
gradual.
Right. It's not like, okay, well, now there's one, you know.
No.
Later,
All of a sudden,
there's
there's like 40 people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is. Like, we're all part of this. We all do it. So there's something in the music that, like, manipulates us, right? So, anyway, she was having a super hard time. And when I get to her, she's like, ay, mira, aquí pusieron un sistema nuevo de computadora y esta es una basura. Y yo no entiendo por qué las cosas las cambian. Esta es una basura. Yo aquí no entiendo nada. And then she'll pick up the phone. Cashier manager, whatever. So, and I'm like, oh my God, Mirta, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. But see, you know, like.
I have to say, though, before we go to our last sodas, I think that your favorite in recent history was probably the older couple that was at the McDonald's and had no idea of anything that was
I posted
on
on my personal Instagram
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, my personal Instagram. I posted, and again, I don't get mad at these things. I enjoy and savor.
Are you kidding
every
me? It's
moment of it.
anecdotes for the show.
I was in a McDonald's, and the reason why I went back to McDonald's, I'm totally gonna throw the McDonald's by my house under the bus. The McDonald's on Kendall Drive always gets your order wrong in the drive-thru. Always. You can order 4 Big Macs and 4 fries, and they will give you 2 quarter pounders, 2 cheeseburgers, a sundae, a milkshake, and, you know, a cinnamon roll. They will not give you what you ordered, right? Because I go order most of the time when I go there is to get something for Tristan.
Right, so it's a fairly simple order.
It's a freaking Happy Meal, either cheeseburger or
chicken nuggets.
Right? It's a Happy Meal, right? They always get it wrong. So I got home and the meal was wrong, and I'm like, oh, if I walk into that house and that child sees that they have the wrong order, like, there will be a crack in the earth's crust. Like,
oh no!
Like, that's how bad it's gonna be. And he was super hungry, so I went back, and that's why I had to go into the McDonald's because I got a comment from Stephanie. From Mamas and Merlot. She's like, what were you doing in the McDonald's inside? I'm like, I have to go back. Anyway, so I go back in, and somebody was wrapping up, and this older couple comes in, and they start looking at the menu. But not only did they start looking at the menu, they had questions.
Right, which is very odd.
Right. They had
McDonald's has like 3 items, essentially.
Sí. Pero ¿cómo es esa pechuga de pollo? And then, the girl, Samantha, who's 15.
Right. She's is already annoyed that she's working on Saturday at 2.
She's like, why am I here? Right. I don't know, ma'am. Okay. ¿Ustedes tienen batido de trigo? I was about to step in and go, ¿qué ustedes quieren? ¿Ustedes quieren un hamburgues? Mira. Este es el tipo de hamburgues que hay. Este es el tipo de pollo que hay. ¿Qué ustedes quieren? ¿Quieren papita?
Okay, McDonald's for Hispanic Heritage Month, you should totally have batido de trigo.
Like, right. That'd be awesome. Like, I was about to step in. I'm like, okay, ¿qué ustedes necesitan?
How can I help?
How can I help? Porque they were there looking at the menu. Like, if they're looking at the Cheesecake Factory menu, like, oh man, I don't want to see them at the Cheesecake Factory.
They would have so many questions.
That would take forever.
So many questions. Like, ridiculous amounts of questions.
So yeah, I took a picture of them and I posted. I didn't show their faces, and it wasn't even because I would never shade someone like that on Instagram. I just thought it's cute. Like, I think it's endearing.
Yeah.
That it's like, ay, pero esa pechuga como es, and I'm like, ma'am, you're McDonald's. You don't want to ask.
Yeah, don't ask so many questions.
Don't ask so many questions.
You don't want to know what's in
preparation
it.
of the meat.
Yeah, like you're not going to be happy. It's not going to end well.
So, anyway, pero bueno. Speaking of McDonald's, has made me thirsty. Although,
yes, we're going to deviate a little bit today.
Today we're having a last beer.
A last beer of the desert, which I don't know because I feel like beer's a diuretic, so maybe you don't want to take it in the desert. But still, we're going to go with it. So our last beer, we're actually going to do a combined last beer, and we're going to give it to Beat Culture Brewery, and by extension, of course, Alan.
Yes.
One of the founders of
He's
the
freaking
brewery.
cool. He's one of the coolest people I've met in a long time.
We legit...
And I'm not really impressed by most people.
Yes, Shania. So
no, seriously, like I'm not impressed by most people. It's like whatever, dude.
Yeah.
But he was freaking awesome.
Phenomenal, like just like a smart, engaging guy. We were talking to him for like 2-3 hours.
Yes.
Like
yes.
y cuidado.
Yes, but so great, and he has a great thing going here now at Beat Culture. So we really invite everybody, to come down here. It's just a really laid back environment.
Super.
It's really Miami. It's not the pretentious
exactly
stuff that you see in
it's
South
not South
Beach.
Beach. Yeah.
It's not South Beach. It's beyond South Beach.
It's beyond South Beach.
To kick in our interview.
Let's
from 2
tie
weeks
it all
ago.
together.
But it really is great, and he's doing great things. So we really wanted to give a shout out to him. He made us feel so welcome. The food here is freaking
food
delicious.
Is so good. Oh my god.
We had cornbread madeleines with a leche condensada dip.
Okay, everybody, I don't care if you're in Miami or not. If you ever find yourself in Miami, you've got to come and just have the cornbread madeleines.
Yeah, so,
so good.
Our hats off to him for being so cool to us, but most importantly for, providing this type of establishment, which ultimately does lead to the culture of what Miami really is. So
absolutely.
So thank you so much. So bueno, that was episode 147.
Yes, sir. Yes, it was.
So
we're zeroing in on 150.
Next week we will have Meghan and Harry on the interview on here on the show.
Yes.
They decided that after Oprah, the only logical.
Pero let me tell you. They feel that they didn't really appeal to the Hispanic demographic.
Right.
And
But we won't.
And Maria Celeste is not doing anything right now.
But we are not going to interview them at a Pretty Garden. We're going to interview them at Dos Croquetas.
Exactly. I was going to say La Ventana en Versailles. Can you imagine?
No, I want to keep it. No, Dos Croquetas. Dos Croquetas is better.
Okay, we can do Dos Croquetas. All right.
Because Harry will be like, "What is this?
Is this like a French croquette?
Like what? Like ham?
Harry
has ham in the middle?
It's so much more than that.
Yes, it's magic, Harry.
It is.
Meghan's probably had a few.
I'm sure. She seems like she goes.
Because Meghan is friends with Gina Torres.
Verdad.
They were together on Suits.
Right. Gina at one point came in and she was like, mira, aquí tienes ropa vieja.
Well, do you remember how I told you I knew Gina Torres was Cuban?
Because of ropa vieja?
Because Gina Torres was very, very big in the sci-fi world, but that's not my world.
Right, that's mine.
So that's your world. So I did not know who Gina Torres was prior to watching Suits. And in season 3, and she was instantly my favorite character on the show, Jessica Pearson. I've only made it clear in 147 episodes.
This episode brought to you by Suits.
In the third episode, she's in the third season. There's a moment that they're talking about takeout. She's like, "Oh, did you get ropa vieja from that little takeout Cuban place that I like?" And I was like, "Wait, stop." I'm like, the way she said ropa vieja,
right?
No.
Yes.
Like, did you get la ropa vieja from that little Cuban takeout I like? And I'm like, no. No.
She said that like somebody who's had it.
No. Unless you are Cuban,
right?
Or
you don't
at
really
least Caribbean.
Cuban adjacent in some way.
You don't say ropa vieja the way she said ropa vieja.
Right.
Así vieja. And I look her up and I'm like, oh, she's Cuban.
Yes, she is.
She is freaking
on both
Cuban.
sides.
Yeah. So anyway, so that is episode 147. Thank you so much, everybody. We hope you listened, laughed, and learned. And as always, grab your pastelito, your croqueta, and in this case, a beer.
Unless you're driving, and then stick with the cafecito.
Yes. Si maneja, no tome.
¿Y si tome?
Toma materva. No. Si maneja, no tome. Si toma materva. Es nutritivo. No, es something. Es never mind. Estomacal. Whatever. Materva. Anyway, Materva's not a sponsor, pero let me tell you.
At
So
all.
we hope you had a great time. Have a happy Friday, everybody. Pero Friday.
Yes.
Have a great weekend.
Cuídense, mi gente.
See you all next week.
Bye.
And Harry and Meghan are not going to be here next week.
But
just
you
in
never
case.
know. You never know.
Bye.
Bye. Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.